Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us today on this showcase for compliance software platforms and solutions. My name is Fiona Hanlon, and I'm the Events and Communications Exec at Compliance Institute. So, a bit of housekeeping. The webinar will run for about an hour. And as per the email yesterday, there is no CPD for this event as it is a systems demonstrations. Any questions or you want to follow up with any of the presenters, we will send their details, emails, etc. to you once the session concludes. So I'll start off by our first presenter today is Chris Hanlon, CEO of CalcRisk. Over to yourself, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona, and thanks for obviously organising the session as well, and thanks to those who have given up their lunch hour as well to come on and look at GRC solutions or compliance solutions as well. So, as Fiona said, my name is Chris Hanlon, and I'm the CEO of a company called CalcRisk, and I thought just to kick it off, I just give a bit of background on who we are and what we do before we do a bit of a deep dive into how we help the compliance function, basically. So. Initially set up in 2006 as a niche kind of risk and compliance service provider. Early 2010s, a lot of our clients were asking us what's the best GRC system or ERM system that they should buy. We basically looked around for solutions that we could potentially white label and offer out to our client base, and we couldn't find a solution that offered the right level of functionality at the right price point, basically. So as a result, we ended up developing CalcRisk, and over the years, it's turned from an online risk register solution right through to a kind of a more fully fledged governance risk and compliance solution. So I thought just to focus on maybe some of the actual compliance use cases, obviously. So on top of traditional risk management stuff around risk assessments and control testing and risk registers and dashboard reporting and everything else like that, I thought it'd be useful just to spend the next kind of 10 or so minutes just stepping through some of the probably the pain points that we help the head of compliance solve in a regulated firm. So obviously one of the big issues is horizon scanning and just the pace of regulatory change, particularly for those who have more than one authorization. It's difficult enough if you're just authorized by the Central Bank of Ireland, but then suddenly if you add in then that you're authorized in the UK as well or elsewhere, it can be a bit of a minefield. So we'll do a bit of a deep dive into that. So, and I know we're a couple of years post the introduction of DORA, but it's still a huge regulatory headache for a lot of firms we're working with, right from the actual kind of sourcing of third-party information through to critical or important business services. And then obviously the dreaded register of information as well is obviously still a huge headache for a lot of firms. Complaints then, just in line with the Consumer Protection Code, a fully kind of fledged complaints module that has all the rules, alerts, and everything else, obviously all built in there as well. I'm going to click forward here a small bit. A couple of other kind of pain points that we help solve then as well. So I mentioned third-party risk, and that regulatory hurdle is really not going away with the different introduction of DBA's sound principles for third-party risk management as well, and potentially harmonizing DORA right across the EU or expanding its scope even. So we'll do a bit of a deep dive into that on one or two of the slides now in a minute as well. So registers is actually one of our newer features, and it popped up at our user group a couple of months ago. And the idea basically was that we were consistently being asked to create modules for conflicts of interest or IT assets or gifts and hospitality. But really, I think what people wanted was a customizable registers module that you could easily customize to suit yourself. It could be regulatory templates that you want, or it could be actually just internal stuff you're looking to migrate away from spreadsheets. The rise of sustainability, despite kind of some of maybe the headwinds that are coming from different jurisdictions about sustainability and CSRD and EFRAG and VSME and all those good kind of standards and frameworks that are out there, seems to land with the head of compliance or the compliance function a lot of firms we're working with. So in the solution, you can easily track and calculate your carbon footprint as well as having your offsets tracked and literally creating microsites right through to interactive dashboards as well, all around sustainability. And then obviously then if you're caught by any of the actual regulatory frameworks as well, streamlines that whole reporting process too. And then the last few pieces I just wanted to touch on then before we do those deep dives that I mentioned then are around obviously compliance assurance. So a lot of firms would use our solution for things like file review processes, peer review, file checking and things like that as well. So yeah, it can be kind of more light touch where it can be high level checklists, reviewing documentation, or it can be more deep dive into the actual compliance assurance review where you're planning out your field work, recording your findings, tracking your management responses, right through to actually assigning actions off the back of findings, and then that whole reporting process and closing out the loop. And the last two pieces then, calendars, obviously a big thing around regulatory returns, policy reviews, training calendars, and again, really trying to migrate the head of compliance or the compliance function away from a mix of Outlook, spreadsheet, SharePoint, and everything else like that, and bringing CalcRisk into the single source of truth. And then obviously in the last piece then as well, and none of us like talking about it then, is breach management, or being able to store any breaches, issues, operational risk loss events, and obviously the dreaded kind of compliance breach then as well. But going that one step further then as well, given that there's actually regulatory requirements around the reporting process and certain templates that need to be generated off the back of regulatory issues or breaches as well. So being able to use the out of the box templates that are actually in the solution, all the data points that you need or that are required to capture as part of that breach are all automatically embedded in the solution. And you can literally just click a button and get those regulatory templates and export them then and get them ready then for whatever regulator that you might need to upload into. So that's just kind of a very, very brief snapshot of all the different kind of compliance use cases, or just some of the compliance use cases that we help solve. And I think the next piece then is probably doing a bit of a deep dive into two or three of them, just to give people a bit of feedback or a flavor of kind of how we solve these potential headaches. So as I mentioned, we're a couple of years post Dora, but the issue is it's not gone away. It wasn't the project. It's very much gone into business as usual phase now. So for firms that were in scope of Dora, I think they've just completed their second submission of the Register of Information. So basically how we assist there is with the Register of Information, we basically have modules that interact with each other around your critical business services and your third party register. By linking those two, you're basically able to get your Register of Information. So rather than you having to worry about all the data validation and the different data points that happen as part of that process, you literally just enter the information in plain English in our solution, and we do all the data translation itself, including the validation and the actual zip folder or zip file that needs to be submitted to the regulator. And then there's other ways of validating within the solution as well. Incident management, I mentioned then, is going to be one of those business as usual or the breach management component. There's now a major ICT related incident reporting template with three different templates, unfortunately, that you have to populate if you ever have a major ICT incident, and different timelines about getting those to the relevant regulator as well. Again, those forms and templates are all automatically built into the system. So if you actually use the solution to track any incidents or major issues that you have, you can basically click a button and get the relevant report for the central bank or whatever relevant authority it is that you're reporting into. There's a whole pillar in Dora around ICT risk management, and as I mentioned, we're not going to touch too much on the kind of core risk features, but just knowing that there's a library or knowledge base of risks, controls, and things like that, all linked back to ISO 27001, NIST, NIS2, and of course you can upload and build your own ICT risk register in the solution as well. Third party risk, we're going to come on to it in a second, because I just noticed that's spreading kind of right across the business, and a lot of our clients are starting to put it on the first line, but starting to kind of get compliance more and more involved, whereas maybe traditionally it maybe sat with the risk function. Gap analysis, basically the ability to be able to go right down into rule level or technical standard level at Dora. So probably a bit late to be going down to that level now, but it was certainly a thing that a lot of our clients were doing a couple of years ago. And then the last piece then is that business services. So whether you're worried about critical or important business services, if you're in Ireland or in the UK, the idea is that it's all mapped in the solution, including the process mapping, your tolerance metrics, your ownership, and all the other data points required. Literally just link them back to your vendors or your third parties, and you should be able to get your register of information then handily enough. And just on the right hand side, rather than me reading them out, I just popped in some recent testimonials we got for firms who were going through the second cycle of the Register of Information collation and submission. And yet we'll pop these slides out afterwards, I'm sure. Anyway, so that was basically covering the Dora piece. And I mentioned then that the other piece then that I think a lot of people were surprisingly bogged down in was registers, and not to pick on Microsoft Excel or anything like that, because I know we all use it, but I mentioned that at our user group, a lot of our clients were asking for modules to address very specific things like conflict of interest, gifts and hospitality reporting, incident registers, training logs, even right down to things like fitness and probity and having PCF registers and CF registers and things like that. So we thought rather than developing 10, 20, 30 modules, basically what we've developed is a registers module, which basically allows the compliance function migrate away from Excel or SharePoint or Google Sheets or whatever it is that you might be using, and move over to CalcuRisk and have everything in CalcuRisk as a source of truth. So it's not, you're not worried about succession planning or someone leaves the business or someone deletes the file, adds a column, deletes a row, whatever it is. You basically have all the rules, data validation, user access rights, and everything else like that set in the system, as well as obviously being able to have it as that single source of truth. I mentioned about customizing it, so you can build your own forms. We're not saying you're stuck with our templates, although we do have stuff that is aligned with regulatory expectations. I alluded to some of those already on the out-of-the-box templates. And then basically then as well, as part of the submission process, if you do need people in the firm to actually submit a line item to the register, if it is just an annual attestation or they want to log a conflict of interest, rather than them having to navigate to SharePoint or somewhere on like your intranet or whatever it might be, they're filling in a Microsoft form or you're hoping they're filling in a Microsoft form or going into that spreadsheet. The idea is that they can just fill in a very simple form in CalculaRisk. It's not necessarily even seeing full sight of the actual register. So you don't want everyone seeing all the conflicts, for example, that you might have in the conflicts of interest register. They literally fill in a couple of data points, an alert goes to the relevant user within the solution, and they can go and enrich the record then to maybe fully populate out the the register in question. And then the last piece I mentioned then as well is that it's linked then to all the other pieces of the system. So for whatever reason, if you need to link a register record or a line item in one of those registers out to a third party, a finding, maybe even a risk or a control, or you just need someone to do something as a result of it, you can literally link a task back to that record, and you can imagine you're building your audit trail all in the one system. So it's not that you have Excel stuck out to one side and then you're trying to then send an Outlook email or a Gmail message then to someone to say, hey, you didn't fill in this properly, or you didn't do this, or you didn't submit this. You have that full workflow basically and alerting all mapped out within the solution as well. So registers is really popular, only launched about 3 or 4 months ago, I think now at this stage. The next piece I want to touch on then is third-party oversight. So this is just a promo video. So this is in beta at the minute and it's coming live now in the next couple of weeks. So the idea then is, as I mentioned about DORA, lots of companies are spending a fair bit of time researching their own vendors, trying to find things like LEI numbers, corporate information, registered business addresses, directors and everything else. And the reality is that a lot of this information is publicly available. So what we've built in the solution is the ability to be able to go in and search for your vendor, your critical third party, or whatever it is that you want to add to your register, be it your DORA register, your CBI register, or just your own part of your third party risk management, and be able to automatically pull in all the relevant data into your third party register. You can obviously do a validation process yourself, but it stops that kind of thing of trying to source all the information either from the vendor or the CRO or company's house or the global LEI foundation or whatever it might be, wherever your source truth is for that. You can basically pull it all in literally by searching for the supplier. And as long as they're registered somewhere, we'll be able to pull that data into the solution. So I mentioned we're pulling it in there. The idea then, once you get the vendor, the supplier set up within the application, you can basically then start to link them out to incidents, risks, and controls. So linking them to incidents is really popular at the minute from a service level perspective. A lot of our clients are doing that. Streamline that clunky DDQ process. So for those of us who are probably on the receiving end of Excel spreadsheets or having to chase people with Excel spreadsheets and DDQs, the system will streamline that whole process right through to the reminder when things goes overdue. And I already mentioned about things like the single source of truth. So being able to store the SLAs and BCPs. And I mentioned it over here then as well. And then obviously some of the outputs then just include the CBI outsourcing register template, which will probably be wound down over the coming years, the DORA register of information with that full data validation based on the different pieces that are required from DORA. And then obviously just the efficiencies you get then as well from not spending time emailing vendors, chasing people internally for different questionnaires, trying to find the registered business address and which legal entity we're actually doing business with. Literally just pop in and yeah, search for the name as you would in Google and let our AI basically go and do the rest for you. And I'm conscious of time. So the last piece I just wanted to touch on then was the horizon scanning piece. So the ability basically to be able to tailor your own newsfeed within the system. So obviously have things like CBI, ESMA, FCA, depending on what your regulatory footprint looks like. Have that populating in your newsfeed. If you do notice something that's interesting, obviously you can get an AI synopsis from the newsfeed rather than having to read that kind of long 50-page article or consultation paper, whatever it might be. If it is something that's relevant then and you want to actually go down into gap analysis mode, literally click a button, the system will generate a gap analysis, and you can move on to step 3 then and start assigning it out then to other people in the business. They can then go and do the gap analysis. They can RAG rate it a red, amber, green, whichever way you do your own gap analysis. If things then get flagged as amber or red or whatever they might get flagged as, you can obviously then track that then through to completion. You can issue a task out to an individual or a user within the application, link it back to that particular rule that might be a breach. So as you can imagine, then you're starting to build out your full audit trail, and everything again is all on the one platform. So you're not worried about spreadsheets and things like that then as well. So, and I think that's really it for me. So maybe back over to you, Fiona. I might have beat you to it just before you turn back on the
Did.
camera, I think.
Brilliant. Very well timed, Chris. Thank you very much. If you want to
Great
pop down
stuff.
slides over to myself, Chris, I will send them out to the attendees as well. So thank you very much for your time today. And like I said, I will send your details off to the attendees as well. So I'll now hand over to our next presenter from Star Compliance, Michael Lees, Solution Engineer. Over to you, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. Lovely to meet you all today. Yeah, I'm Michael Lees. I'm a solution engineer here at Star Compliance. Star has been in the industry now for over 25 years, and we cover many different products across employee and firm compliance. This includes personal account dealing, gifts and hospitality, personal conflicts of interest certifications, the individual accountability regimes, including SMCR, IAF, IAC, and FAR, training and competency. Our control room product covers MMPI and enterprise conflicts and more. But underpinning all of these areas are flexible forms, workflows, rules, emails, and reporting, allowing our clients to implement their policies and help automate many of their processes, whilst also increasing oversight into their employees and firms' activities. So with the 15 minutes I have today, I wanted to provide a bit of a demo of our functionality. And I know we cover a lot, so I'll focus mainly on personal account dealing. And we can look at how employees submit trade requests, how compliance can review those trade requests, how we can get confirmed transaction data into the system, how we're starting to use AI to help support compliance in investigating why a request has been flagged or denied, and some of the reporting and analytics that we have on the data that's being processed. Star has a number of different integrations available to get the data from other data sources into the product, including HR feeds for user data, hierarchies and relationships, broker feeds for brokerage accounts, transactions and positions. And we also have a connection directly with Concur to get expenses into the system to be evaluated against what may have been pre-approved gift and hospitality requests. Each employee will be given a login to the application, and from their home screen, they'll be able to see their reported data, such as previously declared trade requests or gifts and hospitality. They'll be able to see their to-do list, which could include questions about some of their submissions, and we can also include certifications for potentially new hires or annual certifications, where we can bring in all of that data across all of the modules and ask the employee to confirm or update that data based on the period that the attestation covers. We have a very configurable homepage where we can include welcome messages, documents, code of ethics, policies, and so on. But if we go into the trade request form, if an employee wished to trade on a security, then they can do so directly from this home screen. When we search for a security, this is searching across over 75 million different financial instruments that we source from London Stock Exchange Group. It also gives us access to over 10 million public and private companies, along with the hierarchies between them. So if we want to restrict a company, we could also restrict the ultimate company or the parent company and all of its subsidiaries. And that also goes through to reporting, where we can then provide company exposure reports across all of the data, across outside interests, trading activity, gifts and hospitality, and more. The forms that we show are completely configurable. To use the trade request form as an example, the bare minimum that we would expect to receive in a request is the security, but we can also include things like trade direction, which brokerage account, the number of shares, and also the market price is retrieved from London Stock Exchange based on the closing price of the previous trading day. We can also include additional questions, and we can also make these nested. We can include confirmation and links to policies and so on. And when we submit this, it's actually going to review against all of the trading rules that have been implemented based on your policy. So it could be looking at holding period rules. It could be looking at whether employees can trade in certain industries or certain types of securities. But in this case, we can see that it has been denied automatically because it is on the restricted list. If a request did go to review, then we have a very configurable review process. And this is entirely up to you to decide how that is implemented. We could have requests go to the employee's line manager or the department head. We could send a request to a global compliance team or a regional compliance team, or it could be any combination of them. So it could be one review level, it could be multiple. So if we log out now and we log back in as a compliance officer, then we can see what that request process, that review process looks like for a compliance officer. We can see that they get a slightly different view of the application. They get their review list, which can include all of those trade requests, gifts and hospitality, cases that have been raised and more. And we can also access all of the data that the employees have submitted on this left-hand side here. We do support data visibility, so whether you have a super user or a global compliance team, or you have more regional compliance teams, we can set up data visibility so that they only see data associated to employees that they cover. When we go into a trade request, we'll be able to see all of the data that the employee has provided. We get a high-level description. We can provide our review decision. We can include comments for the next reviewer if applicable and to the employee. And we can see the form as the employee submitted. And we can also see any of their recent trading activity, including any trade requests, transactions, and holdings in this section below as well. Wherever we have a review, we also have this further questions section, which really allows compliance or reviewers to ask additional questions to the employee. And this is included in any review process, whether it's a trade request, whether it's a gift or a hospitality request, or whether it's an outside activity or personal conflict of interest request. Anytime a question is asked here, the employee can be notified via email, and it will also appear in their to-do list when they log into the application. If we look at a trade request which has been denied, then one of the areas where we started to introduce AI is using AI to really help support compliance rather than making decisions for them. So in this case, we can click on Explain this decision, and where there may have been multiple, tens if not hundreds of trading rules, we can use an AI feature to be able to summarize exactly why a trade request has been denied or sent to review. So it really just helps minimize the time that compliance and reviewers are having to look into a request to see why they're having to review it, and provide a high-level summary based on all of that information that has been processed based on that submission. However, a trade request, once a trade request has been approved, we have a few different ways where we can get the confirmed transaction data from the employee and from the broker. We have integrations with over 120 brokerage firms across the globe where we can retrieve all of the trading activity and confirmed transaction data via SFTP. We also support statement uploads and also manual confirmation of trades as well. But however that trade or confirmed transaction gets into the system, it will all go through surveillance based on the trading rules that you have in place. So we can look at any transaction which may have been violated a certain rule. And again, we can use the AI feature to look into exactly why it has been created. But we can also look at the surveillance case reasons. So it could be that the employee hasn't held the security for long enough. It could be that they traded in a restricted industry. It could be that they didn't pre-clear, or they actually traded more than what they actually pre-cleared. Using this case process, we can have a number of different statuses where we can assign the case to different departments such as HR or legal or the ethics team, or we can actually say whether it is a violation. Potentially there is no violation at all, but all of these statuses can be configured based on what your case and case workflow is. We can have emails based on all of those statuses that can be sent out to the employee, sent out to their supervisor, or sent to the wider compliance team as well. With the reporting that we have available, we have insider trading reports which can look at this employee personal trading activity along with firm trades, and also look at any price movements and also any relevant news events. We use a tool from Moody's, which gives us access to hundreds of thousands of news articles across the globe, and they score it on a scale of 1 to 9. So 1 could be that an analyst has mentioned a company on a news program, and 9 could be that there's an impending merger and acquisition. But using the insider trading report, we can look across all of those data sets and highlight any potential trades which may hint at insider trading. We also have a number of different ways of reporting on the data. We have built into the product a data export, which is tabular reporting, and you can choose from any number of pre-configured reports. You can define different reports and save them. You can schedule these to be sent to any number of recipients on a periodic basis. For example, if we want to receive a report of any trades over a certain amount from the previous week, we can schedule that to be included as an attachment in an email first thing on a Monday morning to the compliance team or to senior leadership. That could also account for any new restrictions, any cases that have been generated, and so on. We have also launched a new feature for our analytics, and we use Snowflake as our tool for analytics. We have available a data warehouse connector for our clients to retrieve all of their data being processed and generated within Star Compliance and commingle it with other data from other data sources. We also have this analytics tool where we have 20 pre-configured dashboards that our clients can modify and use themselves, or they can configure different dashboards based on their requirements. And this allows us to have more detailed insights and analytics based on the data that is being processed. We could have the total number of open cases, and we can set KPIs based on this. So if we want to be notified whenever there's over 100 open cases, we can do so. And we can also look at trends based on the data that's being processed. So if there's a big uptake in the number of transactions in the previous month or the previous quarter, we can flag that on the dashboard here. And we can also look at employees who are trading the most as well. And we can also look at some company exposure. So if we want to look at any particular company and see what our employees are doing with that company, whether it's trading on that company or whether it's personal conflicts of interest or gifts and entertainment, then we can create dashboards highlighting all of those insights within our analytics tool. We can also look at things like how long it has taken to come to a decision, whether it's a request for a review or whether it's a case that needs to be closed out. And we can look at any trends against any of the trading activity. I think I've got a few minutes spare, but I think that's all I wanted to cover today. So I'll hand back over to you, Fiona.
Great, Michael. God, you're all very good at sticking to time. Well done, everyone, so far. No pressure, Donal. So next we have from Clarity, Donal Lawler. So thank you very much, Michael. Over to you, Donal.
Okay, yeah, no, thanks, Fiona, and thanks to the Compliance Institute. I will try and stick to the time, but there's no guarantees. But we'll do our best. We'll do our best. So, my name is Donal Lawler. I'm a sales director with Clarity. I've been with the company for about 7 years. Just as an introduction, I have a short demonstration of Clarity ready, but what I'll do to introduce the firm, Clarity is an Irish RegTech firm. We are 30 people here, and we're 30 people in the US as well. It's a full suite GRC workflow tool, so it covers the traditional pillars in governance, be it compliance, operational risk, third-party risk management, and incidents and other areas. So that's just a bit of a background to the company. We've been around since 2008. Probably for the initial 12 years, quite focused on the credit union market, but since then we work in insurance, investment management, asset management, banks, e-money firms, and in the healthcare sector as well, quite strong. So there in that market as well. So I have just going to share a screen, and Fiona, if you could let me know once you can see that, that would be fantastic.
Will do, Donald.
Brilliant.
Yep, we can see that now.
Great, great. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show 2 or 3 things within the Viclarity system. The first is a new piece of functionality that we launched in the last couple of months called Reg Monitor, and it's a horizon scanning tool. So I'll show a bit of that, and then I'll show how that maybe if there's a new piece of regulation or a regulatory update, how a new control might be added to the compliance monitoring program. You know, a new check might be added to the compliance, the CMP. And then what I'll do is I'll try and cut it into 5 minutes each. I'll look at recording an incident in the Viclarity system. So these would be unscheduled events, things that are unforeseen. So how maybe our clients record those type of things, those type of incidents. So Reg Monitor first, which is the horizon scanning tool. So what we're in here is a landing page in a demo environment for Viclarity. If you look at the left-hand side, you'll see kind of some navigation keys, and 2/3 of the way down there is a button called Reg Monitor. So what Reg Monitor is a horizon scanning tool. It's, I guess, hardwired into the various regulators. So our clients will choose the regulators that they're in scope for, and we'll have that kind of, you know, as a default within their platform. It'll sit there. It'll allow the clients, you know, our clients to choose the regulators that they're in scope for. You know, here maybe the CSSF or Luxembourg, whatever they want. They may choose, okay, I want to see news items, or I want to see regulatory updates, or maybe a bit of both. Most of our clients are CBI. Maybe put in a date range if they so wish, or to put in some sort of a word search. So it'll allow them kind of, I guess, filter down on whatever search they're doing. So once I hit the blue button there to the right-hand side called filter, that's going to filter that down to the latest regulatory updates from the Luxembourg regulator, the CSSF. So as I scroll down, you'll see the kind of the updates there. I'm just going to stop on this one that says Luxembourg enacts law transposing CRD 6. What we're looking at here is, in the black text, is an AI summary of the document, the underlying document. The blue text here will bring us to that underlying document, so it'll be linked to the underlying document. But then some of the other kind of things on the screen to take note of, if I just click on View Analysis, it's the kind of blue button, and it's got a little eyeglass beside it there. So what that is going to do is open up an AI summary of the document. It'll have the key points bulleted. Perhaps if there's actionable items, you know, that need to be some sort of change, or something needs to be embedded into a control room or a compliance monitoring program, that can be added there. Okay. I'll just scroll down to the document. Okay. So it's an AI summary of it. That's the view analysis. Then if I bring your attention over, you can see everything on this Reg Monitor in this screen is going to be time and date stamped. So it's going to be in kind of date order. But if I bring your attention to the right-hand side here, you'll see a button called Add Task. So perhaps, you know, this regulatory update has been picked up. We want to assign it to somebody within, you know, maybe a responsible owner within the compliance department, or maybe within the business. And to do that, you know, I'm going to assign this to Donal. I'm going to give it a due date at the end of the month. Keep it at medium level kind of priority. And I'm going to say, dear Donal, can you please embed this update into our Lux CMP? All fictional, but just to give you a sense of it. Thanks, Donal. So hit create task there. So Donal is immediately going to get a notification from the system. It'll have the summary of the regulatory update, and it'll have the ask as well from the compliance department, maybe to review and to confirm it's been done, or the due date as well. If we want to look at the tasks that have been created, I'm just going to pop from going back across to the navigation, I guess, bar on the left-hand side. If I pop down from news and into tasks, you can see all the tasks that have been created. And to explain some of the colors that are associated with them here, this has got a medium level priority. The first one that I've just created a couple of minutes ago, due date end of the month. It's assigned to Donal, and it's in progress, which means it's in yellow. And there you can see the ones below are in red because these are gone past their due date. So Donal will have got that prompt from the system. He'll get reminder prompts as well on whatever frequency, the client wishes to use. And then he can do things like add a comment, maybe ask a question, what exactly do you need, to get some clarification, maybe mark it as completed, or he can see the kind of, if there's various dialogue, you can see that within the system as well. If there's kind of over and backing, is this what you wanted me to do? And with everything in Vicarity, you can filter down the items based on priority or regulator or news item. Okay, so that's Reg Monitor. We've just introduced that in the last couple of months, so I thought it might be interesting to the audience. If Donal then chooses actually to put that into his compliance monitoring program, Fiona, I'll just check that you've seen that I've popped onto a new screen just to make sure. Live demos, you never know. Brilliant.
Brilliant. Thanks, Donal.
Brilliant. You never know with live demos. So this is going back to the landing page again, and here you're going to see I've opened a particular folder called risk, and we've got different modules within it. Okay. And so if I want to open any of these modules, say a compliance monitoring program, Donal may wish to add some sort of check to that CMP. We're going to open up, and what we're looking at here are a set of questions down the left-hand side. And these questions have been scheduled out over the year. So if you can just imagine, in this case, we're coming towards the end of the year. It's coming towards Christmas. We're near November. Donal may wish to add, he may review that regulatory update from CSSF or wherever it might be, and say, actually, I need to add a task, a monthly task or a quarterly task, whatever frequency he likes, to the CMP or the questionnaire. So to explain what we're looking at here, you've got questions down the left-hand side. They've been, kind of, I can bunch them up there into kind of their risk categories. They've been scheduled out over the year. Those that are in green are, I guess, the tasks or the questions that have been answered compliantly. So underneath every question, there's a rule that deems the answer compliant or non-compliant. Red is where it's non-compliant, and yellow is where it's scheduled to go, or sorry, yellow is where it's unanswered, and then blue is where it's scheduled to go out in the future. So here in the case, I'm just hovering on the December column. You can see the system will wake up on the 7th of December and reach out to that kind of responsible owner. If Donal wants to add question in lieu of that regulatory update, it's simple, really, really simple to do so. So if I bring your attention back over to the navigation bar on the left-hand side again, and halfway down is a button called Setup. So what this will do is show us the back end of the questions. So this is where new questions can be answered into the workflow, the compliance workflow here, and you have a choice between Everything from single choice to quantitative type questions, upload files, date choices, and so forth. So probably about 8 or 9 different question types. Answering a new question, simple as doing that. And this will bring us into kind of the setup, as the new CSSF regulation being, sorry, not a single choice, yes, no, yes, no. But as I said, it can be upload files, quantitative, qualitative. And that will then be kind of added to the workflow. So very customizable. As with a lot of the tools, we have a lot of templates that are aligned to Central Bank of Ireland, I guess, regulations, be it Consumer Protection Code or CP86 or different in the insurance industry, but also it's highly customizable. So our clients can kind of build out the workflows, aligned to their organization. In order to answer any of the questions, very, very simple for the user. So they will receive an email within which will contain a link to their questions alone. So if I click on this link, it's going to bring me through to the questions that I own. And they will be simply navigated through providing evidence. So again, this is just dummy data for our dummy kind of questions for demonstration purposes. But, does the organization have something? It does. It'll recognize that, yes, trigger a subsequent question. So this is a single choice question. When did you do it? Did it a couple of weeks ago. And then finally, please upload a file. Maybe it requires a file to kind of continue on. So, it'll just push and nudge the users through the workflow and through the questions that they're required to answer. Okay. So that's the compliance monitoring program. That's how a question could be answered to that. Finally, with the remaining 4 minutes I have, I'm going to show you how things like unscheduled events. So obviously compliance monitoring, it's scheduled. It might be every month or every quarter. But if there's something that is unscheduled, Viclarity also includes a web form. So it could be for the recording of unscheduled events like breaches, HR requests, marketing requests. It might be complaints, might be errors. So what this means is that maybe the first line or the business don't have to go into Viclarity to record a breach. So once they kind of hit this button here, and this is always templated to our clients, it'll initiate a workflow. I'm just going to whereby maybe they're asked to put in kind of gatekeeper type information. So, Donald Lawler. Very simple UI. All these gatekeeper information kind of type answers might be hard coded in. So it's almost like predictive text. It happened last week. Here you're asking a lot of date questions because in the instance of breaches, there might be certain rules when a breach needs to be reported, notified, closed down. Maybe the DPO need to be notified. So that starts off the workflow. But what it will do then is by using that will put it into the system proper. So if I go back out into incidents, data breaches, and Fiona, I'm conscious I'm coming up to the
You're grand. You're grand.
This is a US clock. So here you can see it's actually filed that and put it into the kind of DP register. So maybe the section 1 here is owned by the business in terms of gatekeeper, and then it pushes it onto the compliance department, or pushes it onto the DPO, or pushes it onto the relevant kind of sign-offs internally. Again, just to bunch up that workflow, you can see here in this breach incident workflow, it's built into this triage, and it'll push it on then if it needs to be notified to the DPO, or close it off, but you'll see all the stats around it as well. So I think that's my 15 minutes. Thank you very much.
That's great, Donald. Thank you so much. And like I said, your information will be shared with attendees once the session concludes. So I'm going to hand you over to our fourth presenter for today from Regulist, Dermot Higgins, CEO and co-founder. Thank you, Dermot.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Cheers for that. I'll just share my screen there now.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah, you can see that.
Oh, perfect. Excellent. So thanks a million for taking the time, everybody. Absolutely delighted to get the opportunity to showcase Regulist, which is a Salesforce native compliance execution platform that me and my co-founders, Brian and Aaron, are responsible for bringing to you today. My name is Dermot Higgins, and I'm the CEO. So what I have in front of you here is I would like to run you through a use case in order to showcase our tool. And I'd like you to imagine the central bank calls your firm on Monday morning. They want to see how you're preventing market abuse by Friday. So that's the question I'm going to answer in 15 minutes, one screen at a time, one click at a time. So this is your firm, Liffey Capital Partners, a MiFID investment firm authorized by the Central Bank of Ireland. 2 lines of defense. First line is the business. You see our equity sales trading, execution services, and wealth management. Second line is the oversight, which is the compliance and the operational risk. So this is going to be the vast majority of operating models every regulated firm in this room uses. 2 lines of defense, departments, you have your teams and your named heads. So just firstly, the most compliance tools force you to think in their data model. We let you think in your own. So I'm just going to go down to one of these departments here, as we've just so structured our company. And so what you see here, this is what the head of compliance sees on Monday morning when they're using Regulist. Everything attached to her team in one view. You have your 6 controls, 8 monitoring activities, 1 open risk, nothing overdue, nothing pending approval, and it's also flagged that there's 0 policies as well. And the tool tells the truth in that regard. I'm just going to quickly generate our AI summary here. And what you'll end up seeing here is essentially it's an automated monitoring report for that line of business. So you have your teams, everything that's going on around that part of the business, and you're also able to automatically generate your monitoring report. So on demand. For purposes of sample data, what we see here is the compliance monitoring team led by Dermot Higgins demonstrates strong operational performance. All 6 controls and 8 monitoring activities are marked as completed. But it also highlights key risks, control effectiveness, items overdue, gaps in evidence, policy coverage. And you'll see that it's flagged that this team does not have enough formal policies put together to underpin their controls and to satisfy the regulatory regulations. So it gives you your entire business line items monitoring report on the fly. Now that's just the team view on Regulist. But now let's go inside one of those controls. And I'm just going to take you to the most important one, which is communications monitoring. So this is a control that falls underneath the CBI regulatory requirement article, prevention and detection of market abuse. Okay, so this is where the work all actually happens, which I alluded to. So if your communications monitoring owned by the compliance monitoring department, that's just the department we just seen from our business org chart and RASI model. See that it's reviewed monthly, and we see the risk that this control is actually mitigating against. And we see how we're monitoring it. We have 2 monitoring activities in place against this control. So we have the daily call recording review, and we have a monitoring activity in place for email and chat surveillance as well. And what you'll also see is when we scroll down a little bit further in the what proof do we have. So what we have here is an automated summary of the evidence and insights that's actually telling us the sufficiency of our evidence before an auditor does. So in April, instead of a proper review log, someone uploaded a 1-line note saying, reviewed daily calls, no issues. But if you look and see what the AI said about it, it says that this document lacks evidence such as logs, viewer names, timestamps, specifics about the review policy. And then on the contrary, in the same month, sufficient evidence was uploaded, where there was a complete log of 15 out of 15 calls reviewed, 7 indicators screened, 0 escalations, and standard clean day evidence. So the wrong evidence and the right evidence side by side, with the verdict already done. If we scroll down a little bit further, what we'll see next is actual live Salesforce evidence. So Regulus is a Salesforce native compliance execution platform. So most tools stop at the evidence, but evidence, they're just summaries. The real work is everywhere else in the firm. So what you see here is actually 5 live Salesforce records. 5 days of actual surveillance work sitting in cases on your platform. April 28th, 29th, May 2nd, 4th, and 5th. Now, these are live Salesforce cases of your surveillance system. If we go into one of these cases, for example, you'll even see that, here's one, for example, and on the April 28th, a trader on a recorded call said, we should jump on WhatsApp for the rest of this. So that phrase automatically surfaced into the evidence panel. Real customer data, real audit trail, real time. The evidence isn't evidenced by the data. The evidence is the data. If you're running anything on Salesforce, your service, sales, customer records, you can turn it into compliance evidence today without moving anything. I'm just going to go up to the top of this article for the prevention and detection of market abuse, and I'm going to try and stay within time. So look, what you see when you click the view presentation here, assuming your auditor comes in, see how you guys are protected against market abuse. You can just click your view presentation. So it's the same data, it's one click. So the board pack that your chief risk officer sends out on a Thursday night, generated from the live control, not rebuilt by a contractor over the weekend. Okay, so what we see at the start of this board view is your article, which is the prevention and detection of market abuse. The regulation from the central bank's combined MAR, MiFID II, and IAF requirements. So this is the text, not just paraphrase. The risk it creates, if we look to this part of it, we're already showing the auditor that we're managing the risk against this article. So you see our inherent score, our residual. We can see that it's within appetite, but only just. Owned by Aoife Murphy, reviewed by Cian O'Sullivan, and the next review is due in June. And we get to see the same AI verdict in front of the board this time. So you see the ones that are partial, the ones that are sufficient. The board doesn't have to read the file, but they can see the quality of evidence automatically that the AI has done the heavy lifting for. And then just going quickly back to the live operational records, which are your Salesforce cases. And in particular, the one that got caught, that we should jump on WhatsApp for the rest of this, pulled from real Salesforce case. So real evidence, a real audit trail. And you're looking at your regulation, risk, your control, your evidence. One chain, all connected, all in Salesforce. The message is that it's compliance built to run inside your existing Salesforce. You know, the difference with Regulus, just while we close out, and I'm just wary of time as well. Like most GRC tools, they make compliance officers do hard things. We've learned this. You know, Regulus, the idea is to make them enjoy doing simple things, but they still produce the hard outcomes to keep the system and the usability easy. The idea is that the complexity sits in the system and the simplicity sits with the people doing the work. And I'm just going to finish off on 3 very quick things. You're viewing this and you're on Salesforce, you're an existing Salesforce customer. Just know that you can run your compliance program on top of it. And it's one of those systems that it will scale really well onto. Nothing new to buy. You inherit your existing security, single sign-on, data residency, sandboxes, the whole lot. Secondly, if you're not on Salesforce, we believe the principle still applies. Compliance evidence belongs inside systems where work happens, not in a separate silo. And we're happy to talk about what that would look like in your company, even if you're not a Salesforce customer. And lastly, we're piloting now with mid-sized MiFID and credit firms. Compliance Institute members get priority. My contact details are available there. So that's it from us. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, Dermot. So that's great. Everybody's stuck to time, so we've got a few minutes over. So what I'll do is, like I said, I will share all the presenters' details with the attendees. If the presenters, if you want me to share anything out with the attendees, please do send it on to me, and I'll get that sent out today. So I suppose I'll close out by thanking all our presenters. So Chris from CalcRisk, Michael from Star Compliance, Donal from Viclarity, and Dermot from Regulist for your showcase of your platforms today. And thank you for everybody for joining, and have a good rest of your day.